Well, welcome, and today we're going to be talking about Jameos del Agua, which was Cesar Manrique's first great work on the island of Lanzarote. And we'll explore the background to it, what was there initially, what there is there now to enjoy, so that you're fully up to speed with what's going on and whether it's worth you visiting one of Manrique's great works. And it's worth watching until the end of this video because there is a myth on the island that only the King of Spain is allowed to swim in the pool at Jameos del Agua. And I'll give you the truth of that story during the course of this video. Now, Jameos del Agua is a natural phenomenon that has been worked on, if that makes sense. And it's actually part of the Atlantis Tunnel, which is a volcanic tube which was created about 5,000 years ago when Monte Corona erupted, and it created the world's longest volcanic tube that runs around 7 kilometers from Monte Corona down to the ocean. And at the ocean end of it, there are two really interesting cave systems. One of them is Cueva de los Verdes and the other is Jameos del Agua. Now we're going to focus on the latter for this video, but I'll just touch briefly on Cueva de los Verdes. And by the way, it's called that. Cueva de los Verdes means cave of the greens. A lot of people think it's a reference to plants or the green colour, but it isn't. A family lived there a few hundred years ago, and it became known on the island as the Cueva de los Verdes, or the cave of the greens, because their name was Verde. Now that's a fascinating cave with a huge cavern, which in the late 50s and early 60s, the architect Jesus Soto converted into a sort of natural amphitheatre where orchestras could play, singers could sing, and it's largely exactly as he created it back in the late 50s and early 60s. But having completed that project, Soto then turned his attention to a series of jameos, and jameo is the Guanche word for hole, basically. So we're in 1963 now, and Soto is beginning to consider what he is going to do with what we now know as Jameos del Agua. Manrique in this period is living in New York, but he hears about this and he decides that he wants to get himself involved. And when he moves back to Lanzarote 3 years later in 1966, Manrique and Soto get together, with Manrique coming up with the vision for the Jameos del Agua and Soto, the architect, putting it into action. And it was the beginning of a collaboration which lasted years and years and years, and between them they created several of the island's great works. Now Manrique's plan was to create a sort of country club, and it was aimed at people living in Lanzarote at the time. So it would be a place where the people of Lanzarote could go and enjoy this kind of country club vibe, with a beautiful swimming pool in the middle of it, with a concert hall where orchestras, bands, rock bands could play, with beautiful bars and a restaurant as well. And the aim was that people would come along, spend the whole day there enjoying the pool, the bars, the restaurants, and then some music in the evening. He also had a plan to put a residential block at the top, and the idea of that was that people wouldn't have to drive home afterwards, they could stay overnight. He also had some notion in the original planning that there would be tourist blocks, apartments that tourists could rent out in the area around the main jameo. So what he decided to do was to use the main jameo as the swimming pool area, the cave at the back of it as the concert hall area. One of the other caves were going to be the bar and restaurant part, and the lagoon in there where the blind crabs live were going to be left. Exactly as it was. But the work proved to be massively harder than either he or Soto realized. The issue was they couldn't get any kind of heavy machinery into the area. So between them they devised this quite clever system of giant fishing rods, if you like, that were controlled by pulleys and levers and enabled anything heavy to be lowered down into the main jameo, and then the rest of it was all done by hand. The project took a total of 10 years to come to fruition. Now, if you've been to the Jameos del Agua, just try and picture it. All the pathways are volcanic slabs, and each one of them had to be very carefully selected from the volcanic debris in that area to fit like a jigsaw to create pathways so that you could walk from one part of the Jameos to the other. The gardens are absolutely stunning, and it was an area where Manrique put a lot of effort into. All of the plants you'll see in there are endemic. They are all from the Canary Islands originally, and it's now listed as a site of natural historic beauty. The accommodation idea that I mentioned earlier never really got off the ground, and although a shell of a building was put up at the top of the Jameos del Agua at one point, it was later demolished. The place was eventually opened to the public in 1977, so as you can see, a lot of years of work went into it. But it very quickly became the place on Lanzarote to go. And the well-off people of Lanzarote would spend their weekends there. If there were ever visiting dignitaries to the island, they would be taken to Jameos del Agua. And a lot of movie stars and famous people, and of course the King and Queen, visited and spent time there. Rita Hayworth remarkably said that she felt it was the eighth wonder of the world when she visited it in the late 1970s. So that brings us to today, and what do you have at the Jameos del Agua? Well, it's just a beautiful, natural, stunning place to go and visit, but there's a lot more to it than just that lovely swimming pool that you can look down on from the top or walk around when you go down the steps to the main area of it. To one side is a beautiful tidal lagoon where tiny little blind crabs, they can't see, they don't need to be able to see, albino crabs live in that little lagoon, and as you walk around it you can see them clearly. You can go into the auditorium, which is still used for music events, have a look at the CACT Lanzarote, that's C-A-C-T Lanzarote website, and you'll be able to see all the events coming up there. There are also Jameos nights, which are held regularly, where there's musical entertainment, a meal is included in the restaurant, or you could just go along at any time you want and order some food from the restaurant or have drinks at the bar there. It's also a place a lot of people hold wedding ceremonies, and it's just a wonderful area to enjoy getting married in. There is a gift shop which sells lots of interesting Manrique merchandise, and a new addition is the Casa de los Volcanes, which is an exhibition that is spread across a number of rooms at Jameos del Agua, and it explains the volcanic history of the island, the Atlantis Tunnel, and all the other things that relate to Lanzarote and volcanoes over the centuries. And finally, as well as just paying for entry and walking around yourself, there is an Insolita tour, which is like a premium tour you can do, where you will be taken by a guide in a very small group all around, and the guide will explain to you in your language what you're looking at, what's going on, the history of the place, and then at the end of you'll also get access to several rooms that aren't normally accessible to the public. For example, where the musicians go and relax between their sessions, and the back end of the theatre where you'll see the lighting tables and the sound mixing boards. It's fascinating, and it all finishes up with a drink and a tapa, again in an area where the musicians rest and hang out, where the public don't normally get to go. So I would recommend, even if you've been to Jameos del Agua before, doing that Insolita premium tour. Now, I promised to tell you the story about the myth that only the king can swim in the pool. The reality was, for the first, I think it was about 10 years of its life, anyone going there was able to have a swim in the pool and enjoy it. And it was used by, as I said before, everyone on the island, and lots of tourists used to go along to it as well. There are pictures all over the web of people swimming in the pool. The reason swimming was eventually banned was that it was found that the pool was seeping water into the lagoon where the blind crabs live. It was taking a lot of time and it was a relatively slow seepage. But the issue was that having people swimming in the pool required them to put chlorine in it, and the chlorine was causing damage to the lagoon. So it was eventually decided that nobody should swim in there. Now, I'm sure if the King and Queen rocked up and said, I want to have a swim, they would be accommodated and they'd be able to have a swim in the pool. But there isn't a rule that only the King of Spain can swim in the pool at Jameos del Agua. It's a myth. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed that story of the famous Jameos del Agua in Lanzarote, and please stay tuned to our channel. We produce a weekly news video which goes out every Saturday, which will bring you up to speed with all of the news on the island. Thank you so much for watching. If you've liked this video, please do give us a like, and if you want to see more like it, subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.